Hey everyone! Today we talk about the death of work. Think about this for a second. The Empire State Building, a wonder of the modern world, was built in just over a year back in the 1930s. 1 year and 45 days to be exact. Now think about the California high-speed rail. They started that thing back in 2015, and we'll be lucky if a single section of it is running by 2030. Quentin L. Kopp, the former chairman of the High-Speed Rail Authority, bluntly told the New York Times it has become a loser of a project. Initially approved by voters with a $33 billion price tag, the Los Angeles Times now reports the estimated cost has ballooned to over $135 billion, with some analysts projecting a completion date as far out as 2040. We used to build monuments in a year. Now we can't build a railroad in a decade and a half. What happened? We usually blame this kind of thing on low wages or laziness. But what if the problem is deeper than economics? What if the spiritual fuel that drove Western civilization for centuries has finally run out? To understand what's happening, you have to go back to a German sociologist named Max Weber. He wrote a book called The Protestant Ethic and a Spirit of Capitalism. And in it, he identified the ghost in our machine. He talked about a concept the Germans called Beruf, which means a calling. As Weber explained, for ascetic Protestantism, particularly Calvinism, work became a worldly calling, a way to serve God. The doctrine of predestination created a deep psychological need for believers to find signs of their own salvation. Relentless methodical work and the material success that came with it were interpreted as that sign. As Weber famously wrote, the Puritan wanted to work in a calling. We are forced to do so. For a huge part of American history, your job wasn't just a job. It was a divine mission. Being disciplined, working relentlessly hard, saving your money, and delaying gratification. This wasn't just a good financial strategy, it was a religious exercise. It was how you proved to yourself and to your community that you were one of God's chosen, that you were destined for salvation. It created this intense, gnawing anxiety to always be productive, to always be striving. This drove 200 years of insane American growth. The capitalists of that era weren't building empires to buy bigger yachts. They were doing it to glorify God. It was a kind of ascetic greed, a hunger for more that was channeled into production, not just consumption. Then came the Great Decoupling. Over the last century, that religious foundation just eroded. It crumbled away. And when the belief in a watchful God disappeared, the meaning of work changed with it. The transcendent purpose was gone. Your job was no longer a calling, a beruf. It just became a transaction. You trade your time for money. That's it. As one user on the popular subreddit r/anti-work bluntly put it, my loyalty is to my paycheck. If another company offers me $1 more, I'm gone. Why would I pretend it's anything else? And if that's all it is, with no higher purpose, no divine scorekeeper, then what's the most rational thing to do? The most rational thing to do is the bare minimum. Quiet quitting isn't a new trend. It's the logical endpoint of work that has lost its soul. As a recent Gallup poll noted, these quiet quitters make up at least 50% of the U.S. workforce. The data backs this up. In the 1950s, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the labor force participation rate for men was 86.4%. Today, that number has plummeted to 67.5%. Millions of men have just checked out. At the same time, we're seeing a massive spike in what you could call chemical coping and deaths of despair. The use of antidepressants among men has risen steadily, with a 2018 CDC report finding that 8.4% of men had used them in the past month. Economists Ann Case and Angus Deaton have documented how this translates into higher mortality from suicide, drug overdoses, and alcohol-related liver disease, primarily among those without a college degree. We are witnessing a society-wide burnout, a collective exhaustion. This leads us to the weird place we're in now, what you could call zombie capitalism. We have the body of capitalism, the relentless drive for profit and shareholder value, but we've completely lost its soul, that Protestant ethic of duty, responsibility, and asceticism.
The term has been used to describe how zombie firms, companies that don't earn enough to cover their debt, are kept alive by constant infusions of cheap credit, preventing natural market corrections. A recent report from Bloomberg Economics indicated that as of mid-2024, nearly 15% of the largest publicly traded U.S. companies fit this zombie description. And a capitalism without that religious and moral restraint is bound to go one of two ways. For the elites, it becomes predatory. It's about extraction, not creation. It's about buying the yacht. For everyone else, it leads to just giving up, to lying flat, a term borrowed from the Chinese Tangping movement where exhausted youth protest the rat race by doing just enough to get by. There's no longer a compelling reason to participate in a system that feels rigged and meaningless. Nature abhors a vacuum, so new ideologies have rushed in to try and fill that void of meaning. Things like woke culture, which originated as an alert to social and racial injustice, try to provide a sense of purpose and moral righteousness. But as AP News commented, the term has been weaponized and is now often used pejoratively by critics to dismiss progressive movements as divisive and intolerant. What they offer is division and grievance, not the social cohesion that a shared work ethic once did. A culture that views work as oppression rather than contribution has already signed its own death warrant. The question is, can we find a new why before the whole machine finally seizes up for good?